Yep. So hi there. This project is called Fitzroy Bridge House. It involves the adaptation to a significant terrace house within the South Fitzroy Heritage Precinct, and it is also within another heritage precinct, that of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. Built in 1854, the dwelling resides at the end of a terrace row of 4 with an 80s block of flats to its north side. The property spans a long, thin site orientated east-west and faces Napier Street towards the front and Little Napier at the rear. Fitzroy. So South Fitzroy, Melbourne's first suburb, is known for its attached Victorian-era housing, predominantly solid masonry, face or rendered brick, high solid to void ratios and zero lot line setbacks. The neighbourhood contains rich examples of intricate brickwork, corbelling, capping, archways and the ornate and more exuberant detail of late 19th century Victorian styles such as Italianate. Fitzroy is known for its distinctive laneways. Some have substantial boundary walls containing stable and loft structures. Before we commenced, as we like to do, we did a walk around of the neighbourhood and an in-depth study of the history of the site and area. And indeed, a lot of the history of the area can be found in the laneways. Interesting evidence of night soil hatches as well as brick details make for interesting and idiosyncratic aspects. The subject site contained a checkered history. For most of its life, it operated as an apartment house, a kind of shared accommodation commercial premises. And from the MMBW plans from 1899, you can see that the site was actually an amalgamation of 51 Napier Street and 28 Little Napier Street. As you can see in the laneways behind these, behind the original building, these would have been used for night soil, horse and carriage, night soil pickups and the like. This is the photo from Little Napier in 1899 with buildings fronting onto it. And the aerial photo from 50 years later shows that Little Napier building had been demolished and removed, and the subject site was further extended, presumably to fit more lodges in the accommodation. These were the existing photos when we came to the project. So dark, long corridors and rooms. External photos illustrate that the rear wing had been heavily adapted. Existing floor plans show the long rear finger, if you like. First floor rooms were all south-facing and no more than about 2.3 metres wide. From a heritage point of view, as the property is in a heritage overlay only and not state listed, demolition of the rear wing was permitted as long as new works did not adversely affect the streetscape. So we went about doing reasonably deep research on the history of the site and what a new architecture and interior could be. And in this case, as opposed to providing a newly attached contrasting dwelling or addition at the rear, an often supported heritage approach, our proposal was instead set out as a series of separate, self-similar Mews-like outbuildings, separated by full-width courtyards. The client's briefing objectives were to bring light and air into the centre of the long, thin site, connect the buildings such that it doesn't compromise light into the outdoor spaces, maximise the upper level footprint through reduction of stairs, and provide a self-contained rear bedroom above the garage studio with separate rear access for multi-gen living. Mews buildings. The idea of Mews buildings in Victorian times were subsidiary buildings built behind larger front houses that faced the main street. They were separated by courtyards and backed onto laneways, traditionally housing living quarters at first floor level, with ability to open up at ground floor level for horses, carriages, night soil access and the like. Reinterpreting this character of massing, the programmatic objectives are similar, with a series of 3 two-storey buildings housing sleeping quarters above, with a linked open living breezeway beneath, containing flexible living spaces and straddling 2 landscaped courtyards. The floor plan contains essentially living spaces at ground level, sitting room, dining entertaining space and main stair for the house, followed by the main courtyard, which aligns with the neighbour's light court, an open kitchen meals living, a second small courtyard, cafe breakfast area, and a garage studio at the rear. The upper level is effectively all bedrooms, so adults sleeping at the front, kids in the middle and grandparents at the rear. With only one stair internally, it meant that space could be maximised on the narrow site. And in a sense, we like that this approach kind of returns the site closer to what it was in the 1800s and ironically, in the process, makes it far more responsive. Openness and light to the main courtyard is acquired through the intervention of a glass-roofed covered way to the north and an elevated glass bridge shifted to the south for solar access. Somewhat unconventional, this move unlocks the courtyard, providing equal ability to A, privacy, as it does provide solar access, and provides for the borrowed amenity between levels as one can look down over the manicured garden. From the front, the original masonry facade was carefully preserved and restored. In the demolition of the rear wing, all bricks were salvaged and reused, ensuring new work came intrinsically out of the old. And even though the rear pavilions are new, and it feels like they still might be old with the patina of the brickwork, the gesture of repeating a set of arched windows at the ends of each building pays a nod to local Italianate architecture and connects the bedrooms visually at upper level, aiding a consistency and connection between the buildings in keeping with the story of the site and the neighbourhood. When viewed from the public realm of Little Napier Street, the three buildings are unified in their material texture, colour and solidity. Internally from the front, the strategy was one of restoration and sensitive upgrading. This, the first room of the house, that might have been a drawing room, is depicted true to its time as a darker, more intimate room, in contrast to the remainder of the ground floor, which is about receiving light. Internally, colours and materials are differentiated by a number of contrasting yet specific selections that relate to and define each space. Within the existing building, colour coding of original walls is allocated based on its story. For example, the nude pastel colour adores the original walls, a play on the muted tones of Victorian times, whilst newer walls are depicted in white. Douglas fir floorboards are utilised within the front pavilion, interpretive of Baltic pine, whereas Australian hardwood is used in the rear pavilion. The new stairway brings light down from the original double-hung window within the existing wall. Opportunities are taken internally where appropriate to allow for the act of revealing and exposing the trace of original materials. Here, the legacy of original brickwork to the front facade is revealed in the ensuite, whilst the render and paint from the boundary wall was removed to reveal night soil or service hatch moments of a previous time, adding to the richness and storytelling of the interior experience of the dwelling. Directly behind the heritage front hides an inner courtyard and the sounds of a zen-like garden with pond and fountain inspired by the Asian heritage of the client. Essentially an internal room within the sequence of spaces, interior and exterior are blurred, and landscape becomes a central device in cocooning a private experience of calm within the urban grittiness of inner Fitzroy. Spaces are designated, yet with flexibility to open up or close down via the use of a curtain that wraps the courtyard. Openness and informality of the rear have an emphasis on touch, the textural and the filtering of light. Interior, exterior and landscape are all approached as an integrated idea. Interior finishes and furniture have a focus on the handmade, crafted and individual. And in a nod to Mews-style buildings of London, where historic servants' quarters have been converted to self-contained studio residences and workplaces, this rear studio has flexibility to do the same now or into the future. With rear access for multi-gen visitors, it allows for the space to change over time, paying a nod to the reactivation of laneways as community spaces and to accommodate the future densification of our cities. Designed as a home for a family, the resulting conversion celebrates the legacy of the site and surrounds, material authenticity and creative adaptations that enable responsible family living on a challenging site. Thanks.